When I saw this article from Metro, all I could say was, a little bit late to the party, huh? You're only now catching on to what I've been telling my audience since pretty much the dawn of my channel? Well, congratulations, I guess. Could quiet quitting your job be the answer to burnout? What you need to know. What's quiet quitting? Well, that's exactly what I've been telling you guys to do. Just basically do the bare minimum to not get fired. Stop going above and beyond. Don't do overtime unless you're forced to. That's quiet quitting. So you keep drawing a paycheck while doing less work. You're not outright quitting your job, but you're quitting the idea of going above and beyond. You're still performing your duties, but you're no longer subscribing to the hustle culture mentality that work has to be your life. The reality is, it's not. Took you guys a while. This is quiet quitting, according to TikToker ZK Chillin', and could be a rising trend. Man, you guys have wasted years of your life by not doing this sooner. What does quiet quitting look like in practice? It might be saying no to projects that aren't part of your job description or you don't fancy doing, leaving work on time, or refusing to answer emails and Slack messages outside of your working hours. Oh, so that's easy for me. I don't have my work email on my personal phone, and I don't have a work phone. Otherwise, I'm only logged into my work email on my work laptop, which is turned off when I'm not at work. And I mute my phone as well, so if I get a work-related text message, I'll get to it when I get to it. The one exception, of course, is if I know there's some emergency going on and they will need my help and I need to be on call. Okay, if it's scheduled ahead of time, sure. But I don't do this surprise bullshit. I don't do those emergency calls at 2 a.m. Nope, I'm not being paid to be on call. There's people at the company whose job it is to be on call. They get paid extra for that. I don't. So you want me to be on call? I'm willing to get on the on-call rotation, but not for free. So it could be as simple as a mindset shift that's not noticeable to anyone around you, but allow you to feel less mentally and emotionally invested in your job. It's true that never consider your job your whole being. This might sound appealing, but experts advise proceeding with caution. Well, they might make some good points. Let's see if they're onto something. If you are getting to the point in your career where you feel like you're putting work above everything else at the expense of other important parts of your life, it could be incredibly demoralizing. Charlotte Davies, a career expert at LinkedIn, tells Metro, it's very likely you'll start to retreat from work, quiet quitting, in an attempt to bring back some balance. Yeah, but you got to make sure that if you've set the expectation with your boss and coworkers, it could get pretty brutal if suddenly you're doing less. Of course, the best piece of advice is to avoid this happening in the first place, but we all know it's very hard to do, particularly with the pandemic blurring the lines between career and personal lives. It still impacts how we work now. Now, quiet quitting might appear to be a way to treat burnout, and it's true. The act of deprioritizing your job and recognizing that you are more than what you can do to help reduce overwhelm. But it's worth noting that by the time you're considering quitting your job, it might already be too late. Ain't that the fucking truth? I have a few days here and there where I'm just sitting there vegetating because I just I can't even force myself to do my tasks for the day. Like, I actually sit there thinking, like, maybe I'd rather just be unemployed than doing this. It's all too easy for burnout to creep up on you. Once the threshold has been crossed, you will need proper mental health support and time off. Put simply, at this point, quiet quitting might not be enough to help you heal. They're right about this, actually. This is 100% true. So quiet quitting isn't about treating burnout and healing. It's about continuing to draw paychecks as long as you can while you work on what you want to do next. That's what it's about. Indeed, quiet quitting could be more of a preventative measure, but that requires you to really be in tune with your mental state and suss out that you want to rank other parts of your life more highly before the symptoms of excess stress really settle in. Easier said than done. It's also worth considering whether, rather than quiet quitting, you'd be better off just actually quitting. A question I ask myself every day. And then I remember the Brandon recession and I realized, God damn it. Now, are you having issues with this job specifically or the idea of work as a whole? If it's the former, perhaps it's time to consider a job change. There might be a role out there you actually genuinely enjoy, or maybe there are specific things about your role that you'd like to tweak, like actively pushing with these changes. Could you feel more empowered? Man, so see, when there's this many typos, like I start misreading it because it doesn't make any sense. The quiet quitting is by nature passive, and it's possible that by diving into the trend, you could feel even more powerless. It depends on what else you're doing with the time you free up. The quiet quitting is often a sign that it's time to move on from your role, says Jill Cotton, career expert at Glassdoor. If you're reducing your efforts to a bare minimum needed to complete tasks, your heart is probably no longer in the job or the company. What if it never was? What if you were always only at the job to earn a paycheck? So before deciding to quietly quit, reflect upon what isn't fulfilling you and your reasons for making this choice. Could whatever is causing your frustration be fixed by simply expressing your concerns to your manager? Unfortunately, not. So whether your work-life balance isn't right, the salary isn't meeting your needs, or there's no support to get a promotion you want, to have a conversation with your manager before deciding to disengage from your role. It might go without saying, but it's important to consider that quiet quitting, you're likely shutting yourself off from promotions and pay raises. If you're quiet quitting to focus on your own projects, then this is no big deal. If you've already worked yourself up to a position where you get an acceptable amount of money relative to the time and effort you're putting in, and you're instead shifting your focus to just maintaining that the way it is, and then you're focusing your actual effort on other projects, nothing wrong with that. If you're actively looking for other jobs or genuinely aren't bothered about progression at your company, that's fine. Great caveat. But make sure that that's the case. If there's part of you that's desperate for a promotion, quiet quitting will feel good at first and absolutely awful when you pass over for something exciting. This is just common sense 101 here. These are risks attached to taking this approach to your career, says Paul Ferrer, a founder and chairman of Aspire. Inevitably, your progression within the company will become limited, particularly if your colleagues are going above and beyond to exceed employer expectations. Yeah, I don't mind. If I'm happy with where I am, I don't care if newer coworkers get promoted above me. You also run the risk of having little to show your next employer when interviewing for your next role. What if you're quiet quitting this so you can focus on being your own boss at your next role? See, that's the thing. If I become self-employed, I don't have to prove myself to anybody except for my customers at that point. If you take on quiet quitting involves still doing all your required tasks, you won't be in line for a sacking. But if your judgment of the bare minimum is off, you could be in trouble. This is true. And this is especially dangerous if you used to be a go-getter and you set the standards super high. If you suddenly decides to go the quiet quitting route after being a tryhard, you're going to have to gradually ease them into the new expectation. Because if you just overnight go from going above and beyond to doing the bare minimum, that will get you fired. Everyone's going to notice. That's especially true if your company might be looking to make redundancies. If they need to make tough choices, the people who are clearly not putting in much effort will likely be the first on the chopping block. That's also true. And I don't blame employers for doing this. I really don't. Now, of course, if you have employees that are engaged and going above and beyond and trying their best, of course, you're going to keep them over the ones that are doing the bare minimum, minus any other factors, of course. Because it could be the guy doing the bare minimum is able to get away with it because he can get shit done, in 1/10 the time as the go-getters. Paul says, as long as you're available in your contracted hours, there's no reason for you to fear losing your job. It's true, kind of. So that said, quiet quitting isn't like to put you first in line for a promotion or pay raise anytime soon. That's obvious, especially to anyone who does this. Actively disengaging from your job won't solve the problem. It could backfire, Jill notes. Now, what you see as quiet quitting may well be loudly saying, I don't want to be here, to your manager and coworkers. Yeah, that goes back to what I just said. If you used to be a tryhard and suddenly you do the quiet quitting thing, you're basically broadcasting to all your coworkers that you've given up. Now, once a person is mentally checked out of a job, it's difficult to hide your lack of engagement with the job and company. And this is why it's important to have none to begin with. And if your lack of enthusiasm, it's not just me, is sensed, you're less likely to be considered for a promotion or other opportunities that could arise. I'm only interested in maintaining my current level. That's fine, as long as it doesn't go backwards. It's also difficult to judge just how much to reduce your efforts to achieve what is contractually required. I mean, it depends on how good you are at estimating, I guess, but usually it's self evident. Now, be warned too, you might also notice some real backlash to dramatically changing the effort you put in. Yeah, what did I just say? If you've always gone above and beyond, staying late, taking on every project, and doing whatever you can to do a good job, suddenly setting a boundary is likely to provoke some surprise from your managers and colleagues. Yeah, especially if they planned around you still doing this. If that doesn't mean you shouldn't do it, just be prepared for some not so positive reactions, considering how you will respond. Consider how you would respond if you're asked what's going on. And put yourself in your boss's shoes for this one. If you had an employee that was a tryhard, and you could always, like, no matter what you dumped on them, they worked late to get it done, and you planned your next few months around them still being that way, and suddenly they're refusing tasks, it's gonna definitely get some unwanted attention. Might also be harder than you think to take on quiet quitting. If you're someone with people pleasing tendencies, it's going to be hard to unlearn certain behaviors. So if you're a doormat, you're going to stay a doormat. So quiet quitting could be a useful tool for a short period of time, especially if it's coupled with looking for another job. Once you start a new job, it's much easier to set boundaries from the get-go, thus removing the need to quiet quit. This is very good advice. I agree. It's important to set the standards early. The risks to quiet quitting come if it's employed as a long-term strategy with no other actions to try to change the reality of your situation. If you want to stay at this job but experience less stress, you may need to talk to your manager to make changes. If you want to leave the job and start another one, you need to take action to make that happen. Yeah, I'm in a funny position here where I think a lot of my complaints about my job could be resolved if I was just left alone to do my job with no interruptions during the day. But I know that's impossible at this company, man. Don't be a Milton, be a Wally. That's what this is. Quiet quitting is all about being Wally.